Good morning, everyone. Welcome to IMD TV's coverage of the Olympics. We are one day away from the closing ceremony, and we have many things to talk about. But I'd also like to bring in my co-host and guest speaker, Mr. Carl, just in his opinion about the Olympics today. And we could talk about the main highlights, the top stories. I mean, as of today, the U.S. has won gold in the women's 4x400 relay, leading the charge with Allison Felix. I mean, I'm Mr. Carl. I don't know your background too much, but I mean, in the Navy, I bet track and field was such an amazing sport, such a sport to watch, really. And at the Olympics, it's the same deal as well.
Yeah. That is probably one of our stronger sports at the Naval Academy now. Both the indoor and outdoor track teams are perennial Patriot League champions, and they repeated this year as well on both the indoor and outdoor side. The season was a little bit shortened just because of the the COVID virus, but still they're able to excel. And certainly when you look at the performances over the last 24 hours, Allison Felix is right at the top. 11 total medals now to surpass Carl Lewis, and just an amazing feat. Somebody who's, when you think about everything that happens from the time that she first started, it's really amazing what she's had to deal with, because early on, she had those early successes and so forth, and then signing with Nike, and then having the big blow up with them, and then of course becoming a mom as well. But being able to come through all of that and wind up on this particular stage and performing at the level that she did, to me, it was just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of athletes actually are coming back from motherhood. Like one of my mom's good friends, the middle for the women's volleyball team, Foluke, she just had her kid, and she is playing on the team. She played in club. She is dominating in the middle. And the USA volleyball team is actually headed into the gold medal match tomorrow or tonight at 12:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to face off against Brazil. And so that would be as a volleyball player, I'm very excited to watch that game, most definitely. And shout out to France as well for winning the gold against Russian Olympic Committee. It was such a tight game, back-to-back, tit for tat. And I really enjoyed watching that.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely find that volleyball game somewhere. If not, that's a good thing about YouTube. You won't miss it after it's all over. You can watch it again. But yeah, I was watching. I was keeping track and tuning into the men's basketball game. That was the other big story yesterday. Being able to hold off France, a pretty tough team actually. And then of course when I looked at their roster, they have about 3 or 4 NBA players. So I guess it's not too surprising that they were able to challenge the U.S. team the way they did. So, I mean, hats off to Kevin Durant and that whole crew for being able to come through when, a lot of people were just saying, they don't really have it this year. And certainly it's probably not their most talented team. Mm-hmm. But when you look at Durant, I mean, he's clearly, just based on the stats, he's their most decorated Olympian in history now, when you look at what he's done over the last 3. So certainly when you got somebody like KD on the court, your chances are always going to be pretty good.
Exactly. I mean, the U.S., especially in men's basketball, has taken a lot of heat, especially early on when they lost to teams like, I think it was France and Nigeria.
Yep. Yeah.
But I mean, they did it again. The 4th consecutive time in the row, U.S. has won gold. And, now as Kevin Durant says, now he can talk his shit. So I bet he was getting a lot of backlash and a lot of people second guessing them. But I mean, they've done it again, and they've proved to everyone why the U.S. is first when it comes to basketball.
Yeah. And the other guy I feel really good about too is I really feel good for, I guess is a better way to put it, is Coach Popovich. I think that a lot of people, it's particularly the ones in the press, are kind of, that he's probably not their favorite guy. But I maintain that if you ask good questions, he'll give you good answers, right? I mean, he doesn't suffer fools lightly. But more than anything else, when you think about all the success that USA basketball has had, and of course with Coach K's retirement and Pop taking over, it was nice to see that although the team had a different look, they didn't skip a beat at the end of the day. I mean, certainly they had to go through some things and all that, but once everything was done and the final horn sounded, there's that familiar team at the top of the podium, and that's the U.S.
Yeah. I mean, in other news as well, we have the soccer match, which the U.S. won bronze on August 5th, but we have the gold medal match that happened yesterday between Canada and Sweden, which was actually won in penalties. And
Right.
Canada took home the gold out of the 3-2 when it comes to penalties. It came down to the last second, and penalties always make me nervous. I hate them.
Yeah.
I don't like them. I mean, even if we saw the backlash that the boys from England got in that tournament with Italy. So they always make me very nervous, and you can see the Swedish girls were just devastated that they lost to Canada in the penalty round after such a big game.
Well, I tell you, I do watch soccer during the World Cup. I haven't really watched any matches during the Olympics, mostly because the U.S. got bounced in the semis there. But so I didn't watch the final.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I do know about the semis, there was a little bit of a controversial call that put Britain on the line to it was Canada that they played, I think, that allowed them to get the penalty kick to push them into the final. But I haven't had a chance to talk to a lot of soccer players recently, but one of the questions I would have for them is if there was one rule that they could change about that game, what would it be? And I have a feeling it would be that offside call, because I don't understand it. I think it sucks all the offense out of the game, and that's what people want to see. You know what I mean?
Is it my fault that you're bad at defense? No.
That's right. Yeah.
Why? I mean, if there's an offside call in any other sport, we'd be like, that's stupid. It's their fault for letting us get back.
That's right.
But, I mean, soccer is soccer. It's the way the game is played. And I mean, I think there's offsides in other field games where you have to have a goal, like field hockey, water.
Yeah, lacrosse too as well. But it's a little bit different dynamic there because the offside call occurs at a point where, I mean, it's basically when you have too many offensive players on one half of the field. So it's a little bit different than from in soccer. But I just know that when I watch soccer, I mean, first of all, they're incredible athletes. I mean, to be able to run like that all game long with minimal substitutions is one thing. I mean, it's amazing. But to see, and I like the defensive strategy as well when you look at how the team's set up and everything, but my goodness, just so many games going to penalty kicks is just frustrating for me.
So frustrating. And I mean, at such a high level, most of the games come to that, which is
right. That's exactly right.
So annoying. But I mean, talking about both sides, we have the field hockey game, which was won by gold by the Netherlands. They beat Argentina, and Great Britain. Oh my goodness. Great Britain won against India and getting them the bronze. India has a very strong presence in field hockey. Both men and women's came into the finals match. India men's actually winning the bronze against Germany. But in the men's, well, we have Belgium winning gold against Australia. But yeah, India doesn't really get a lot of limelight in the other sports, but they have such a presence in field hockey, which is very nice to see.
Yeah, that's true. They've always been fairly strong there. That's one of their main sports for sure.
And to get more political, so to say, the Olympic Committee stripped the credentials of two Belarusian coaches who tried to force a sprinter, Kristina Shiamoskia, to return to the country. There was a lot of backlash. There was a lot of criticism against that because she spoke out against their coaching style. And one of the presidents, I think his son or his nephew, was on the Olympic Committee for Belarus, and wanted her to get her back, and she said to potentially face punishment. So what are your thoughts on that, and how is this kind of playing to the politics that the Olympics said they weren't going to play into? It's all very strange, I think.
Yeah, I think that I mean, you probably see, I don't know if Rio was something we didn't, I'm not sure what we saw in Rio, but it seems like every so often you will see situations like this come up. And when that happens, I'm always coming down on the side of the athlete, especially when you're dealing with sort of any kind of what they believe to be, government intrusion and so forth. Because at the end of the day, they're just there to represent their country. And certainly in the countries where there's different levels of freedom, for lack of a better phrase, I think that, you're always going to have that issue. And I think that in those particular cases, like I said, I mean, the best thing that could have happened was for her to get shepherded out of that country and get to someplace safe, because you just never know what's going to happen if the government gets involved on that level, especially with somebody who speaks out against it. I mean, it's a lot different being any other place but here. You know what I mean? So
Exactly. I mean, and we do not know, especially as Americans, I feel like the one thing that we get criticized about is not knowing the political situations of other countries and only focusing on ourselves. And so when I first heard about this, I was like, oh wow, an Olympian is really getting backlash over something political. I was like, why is this even a thing? And why are they doing it on such a world stage? But I think as we get older and as the world gets more globalized, like it's our job as Americans to really know about the news elsewhere. And I think the Olympics is a great place that really shines the light on multiple countries at multiple times. So we're not so in our little American bubble, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
But yeah, I mean, what other games we have one more day of the Olympics, unfortunately. And then obviously we have the Paralympics coming up after this. But what matches, what things are you excited to see for it in the future?
Well, let's see. I mean, like you said, there's only a day left, so certainly the men's marathon is left. And as we closed out the discussion yesterday, Mark was, put the question out there. Hey, do you think we're gonna catch China in the gold medal count, even though we're just totally blitzing the field in the overall number of medals? And I said, well, I haven't gotten a look at the remaining sports left, and I don't know how many Chinese athletes are left to compete versus American athletes. But I said that I think we'll make up some ground on them before the end of the Olympics, and that certainly played out because yesterday we were 5 gold medals behind, and now we're only 2 because of Allyson Felix's and her team's medal in the 4x4 relay. The men's basketball team won. Obviously, we're gonna get another one. I'm like, I shouldn't say that, but I feel very, very confident that the women's basketball team will take care of business today.
Very confident.
And then we got a shot against Brazil in volleyball. That's gonna be a tough one, but there's an opportunity there.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I don't know if all the diving is done. The Chinese are typically strong in diving, both on the men's and women's side, because I think they still had like the 10-meter diving to go. But so there's a shot, there's a chance. It'd be kind of cool to run the table on all 3 medals. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I still think that the U.S. showed up with the most depth, and they've proven it just based on their performance.
Exactly. And I mean, China, right now they have 38 golds, 31 silvers, and 18 bronzes with a total of 87. And in those sports, we see diving, like you said, weightlifting, table tennis. But to come up, we have synchronized swimming, which is always a big one for China. We have boxing, which was won by China in women's welterweight today. Wrestling, which they lost to Japan, and they lost karate to Turkey, it seems like, or my bad, Azerbaijan. But they're still in there. They're still competing. There's a lot of events that happening tomorrow, like the men's marathon, rhythmic gymnastics as well. China's been a big competitor when it comes to gymnastics.
Yeah,
running the U.S. up on a lot of medals.
Yeah, my guess is that the U.S. will. The chances are fairly slim, although it could happen. They're fairly slim that they overtake them in the gold medal count, but there's not enough events left for them to get the rest of them. I just don't. Yeah. I don't think they'd have to run the table. Basically, there's not 21 events left. So.
This is true. They cannot surpass us when it comes to overall medal count because we have 108.
Right.
That is crazy. And we know the U.S. is a superpower, and we not only when it comes to sports, but when it comes to all regions of the globe, really, in that sense. But Jesus Christ, 108 medals. How many athletes do we have competing in this? Why am I there? They
exactly.
Go around.
Well, and it could have possibly been more because several years ago, I'm thinking back, I don't know how long ago it was, but it used to be where the swim team could send, three competitors per event. But at some point in time, they changed it to 2. And I think selfishly, I think it's because the U.S. swim team was just so dominant on the world stage that they said, look, they're sweeping these events left and right. We got to give somebody else a chance. And of course, at the same time, you had countries like Australia and England and these other countries that are ramping up their game. So that combination of cutting back the number of competitors to 2 per event, and those 2 would still have to qualify all the way through to the finals to even have a chance. But I just remember back I think the second Olympics I watched was the games in Montreal, and the U.S. men's swim team just just ruled the pool. I mean, it wasn't even close. I mean, they were like I said, they were sweeping events. It was routine that they were sweeping events, and if it didn't happen, it was a surprise.
Exactly.
So,
I mean,
but yeah, so it could have been more this year if they'd had the same rules, but they're not. So you just kind of make do. So
I mean, there are a lot of rule changes happening this year as well with athletes. I mean, if your event was finished, like you couldn't stay around.
Yeah.
And watch your other friends. You couldn't have the party. Like a lot of the coming into the Olympics is not only participating in your event, doing well in your event, but having a blast basically in a foreign country with all these other athletes and having fun. A lot of athletes, as soon as their event finished, they went home. That was cool. And I think that kind of took the fire out of the sails for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that think about all those athletes and especially the ones who are at the Olympics for the first time, right?
Exactly.
Part of that, like you said, is competing. The other part of it is just experiencing the world around you and just really getting the most out of the experience that you can. And when they're, when this happened and they had to go home, it's like, oh, what a drag. But real quick, funny story for you, talking about just like seeing other parts of the world. One of our coaches at the Naval Academy, he's a gymnastics coach. His name is Kip Simons, and he was a competitor in the '96 Olympics, right? So they were kind of reminiscing with him, this being Olympics the last couple of weeks, and they were talking to him about, what he liked about it. He says, well, it was an honor representing my country and everything. He goes, the one thing that bummed me out was that it was in Atlanta. There was no chance for me to go and experience another part of the world. It's just like, oh God, I just went to Atlanta, Georgia, big deal. But still, he said he got a lot out of it. And, there was all that. But and then the women's soccer coach for Navy, her name is Karen Guevara. She competed, I believe, in Barcelona. No, it might have been Atlanta as well, but she actually won the world championship with the U.S. women's national team in '93 and then competed in '96. And I believe they won that gold medal there as well. So, yeah, we've got a couple of Olympians coaching at Navy, so that's kind of cool.
Very cool. I mean, actually, a good friend of mine, she, I would say I'm good friends with her daughter, Carla Overbeck. She competed.
Oh, I know that name.
Yeah. She was the assistant coach for Duke women's soccer here. Amazing person. Love her. She competed into the Olympics. I think she competed in '96. I want to say.
That's a likely possibility because she was in the World Cup team in '99. So it was either '99. She was on that World Cup team in '99. So she either competed in '96 or 2000.
Yeah, she was in the U.S. winning team in '91 in China, and she captained for the World Cup squad in the semifinal. And she was also the captain in the '96 Olympic team, and she has her gold medal. I have touched a gold medal. It is so nice. It's very heavy. It's a lot heavier than you would think. But she's amazing. Her daughter plays volleyball, and she's an amazing person. And I actually asked her to come on, but she had some other duties. They're starting preseason as well. But
right.
She's so cool. And I wonder how she feels about the soccer. Maybe we should have asked her what she would have taken out of soccer.
Right. Hey, well, with the volleyball match coming up between the U.S. women and Brazil, I had a couple of questions for you there. I love volleyball. I think it's a great cross-training sport for basketball. I like to watch the team just kind of moving together as a unit out there. What are some of the things that you see that U.S. needs to be able to do to come out on top? Because I know those matches with Brazil's are always just knockdown, drag out fights, and I'm not expecting anything different this time around. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, volleyball. I was actually talking to my teammate about that this morning. We actually watched the France and Russia match between the men's match, and we compare ourselves. I guess when it comes to women's sports and men's sports, we compare ourselves all the time, but we try to incorporate some of the men's strength, their speed and dexterity is coupled, but they don't have the technicality. For women's volleyball, there's a lot of technical play. There's a lot of passing. There's a lot of volleyball IQ, so to say. And so while we're trying to trick the other player or trick everyone across the net, I think the USA team just needs to be a little more aggressive. Bump all the technical stuff. Bump trying to be smart. Yes, you have to be a smart player, but if if I can outplay you every time, if I can just put that 1 inch to get the ball on the floor,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we can get a win, especially with such a defensive team like Brazil. Brazil
Mm-hmm.
is known for its defense. It's known for its huge blocks. It's known for its small liberos who can literally get under any ball and make sure it doesn't drop. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think just having that speed, having that dexterity, having that connection between the hitters and the setter is really what's going to set us up on top and hopefully get us the gold.
Yeah. Now let's talk about that for a second here, and because I know there might not be a whole lot of people who follow volleyball that closely, and I'm a fan, but I'm certainly no expert. This whole position of libero, okay? When I've been watching matches in the last couple of years, you see somebody out there in a different colored jersey. I just figured they were the setter, but that's not true, is it? That's a libero that's dressed like that, right?
The libero, yes. So the special thing about the libero is that they can move anywhere in the backcourt. So the 3 positions in the backcourt, they can move anywhere. They don't have to, it doesn't count as a sub. They can do whatever they want, but their only restriction is that they can't go in the front court, so beyond the 10-foot line, and they can't play there at all. And so, yeah, they're the defensive specialist. They're the one that calls the shots in the back row. They usually get most of the passes. Usually they are opposite of the outside hitter, because the outside hitter is usually the one who gets most of the balls. And so they're the ones defending most of the balls because they're diagonal. And that's the easiest shot for an outside to hit. And
Right.
so they are instrumental when it comes to the game of volleyball, because as a defensive specialist, you cannot run offense without first defending the ball.
Right.
You can't score points if you can't even get the ball up. And so the defensive specialist on my team, actually, Mackenzie Cole, her brother is playing for the under-21s national team for men's. And so her whole family has been really involved with volleyball. Her father is the AD at Hofstra. Mac has played USA with me as well. And so she's on my team, so I'm going to brag about her a little bit, but she's the best libero, I think, in the ACC and in the NCAA. So if she's watching, Maka, I love you, and you're the best.
Right. So I'm gonna get back to that question, that volleyball topic in a second here, but I was just glancing over here at the chat here, and Mark had a comment. Hopefully we can get that whole audio lined up there with Mark, but he was commenting on the women's marathon as well. I did catch that result where we had the American that came in, I guess it was third, and that's another thing. And I'm noticing it's been a long time since an American. I'm trying to remember the last time an American male medaled in the marathon. But we're starting to see it a little bit more frequently with the women, obviously this time around. And I believe in either Rio or London, we had an American finish on the podium as well in the women's marathon. So I would need to double check that. But it was nice to see somebody up on the platform this year in Tokyo for the women's marathon for sure.
Exactly. And the gold and the silver went to, Kenya just dominates in the marathon. They also dominate in long distance when it comes to the field track and field, but they gold and silver. But it's very, very nice to see Molly Seidel winning the bronze medal for since 2004 was when we even medaled for the last time for the U.S.
Okay.
And, there's no medals won yet for the men's. I think they're competing tomorrow, I believe. Yeah, actually today at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And so that's one to watch out for. With Adara Ibrahim for the U.S. is going to be competing in that, and so we will see.
He's our best shot, I think. Here, the very first Olympics I watched was when I was 10 years old, and it was the Munich Olympics, and that was a year that that was the last time an American male won the gold medal in a marathon. His name was Frank Shorter, and the weird thing about that event was, like I said, it was on the last day, so they're tracking the runners, running all through Munich and stuff like that. And I can't remember at what point in the race, but Shorter took the lead. And at some point it was basically, okay, all he's got to do is just, not get hurt and he's going to win. Right. So obviously everybody's getting really, really excited. The last time that an American had won before that was like in, 1908 or something. And so everybody's getting ready to have him come into the stadium and make his last lap and finish. And next thing you know, you see this young German dude that looked fresh as a daisy. He
That's
jumping
so
in there, and
I
he
never
basically like jumped out of the crowd and ran in there, and like everybody's cheering him
Mhm.
because they don't know what's going on outside the stadium. They just figured he was a competitor. I mean, he had the number and everything, and then Shorter followed him in about maybe, I'm going to say, half a minute later, and he's completely bewildered. He doesn't know what's going on because he sees this other person on the track. Now, like the cops caught up to him and hustled him off the field there. But it was just like it was a drag because it kind of stole Shorter's thunder a little bit because the crowd had already kind of reacted to the first runner coming in, and then they said, "Well, wait a minute, who's this guy here?" They didn't realize that Shorter was actually the one who was leading the race.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bummer for him, but he got over it. But that was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen, and I mean the weirdest thing I've ever seen since, and that was the first Olympics I'd ever watched. So it's kind of strange.
It's strange. I mean, going back to the medal tally as well, I just wanted to talk about how we see these huge countries like US, China, Russia, and how they are always at the advantage. Do you think that's due just because of our position in the world, or do you think that's also due to the large populations of these countries? These populations, they send more delegates, they have more money, they have a larger pool of people to choose from to get these medals. And what is one way that what's something we can do as a global community to equalize maybe this situation?
Well, when it comes to the Olympics, I think, I mean, you're always going to, I mean, to your point, yeah, you got a bigger pool to draw from. You're going to have, more success across the board. Now, what I think is as important in the Olympics is when you find countries that are able to say, you know what, that sport right there, that's what we're going to specialize in. So Jamaica sprints, right?
Exactly.
I mean, let's face it. I mean, they dominate the sprints these days across the board, So even though they don't have the specific numbers, they understand that if we're going to compete on a global scale, we can't do it in every single event. We got to put our money into one particular program and maybe two programs. Well, I should say the majority of our money. Let's put it that way, and dedicate our efforts to developing those athletes and bringing them up and doing it that way, because there's just no way they're going to be able to compete across the board. So the only other option is to specialize. And Australia to a degree is in the same way. I mean, they focus on swimming primarily, right? I mean, when you start getting to other countries like Britain, they can kind of extend a little bit, because now you can say, okay, we're going to go with track and field as collectively, right? Everything, maybe not the field events necessarily, but a lot of the running events, middle distance especially, they were really known for years. But I think that's the way they answer it. And anybody who's a sports enthusiast will appreciate that. They said, okay, wow, there's this little island country out there in the Caribbean Sea just kicking butt in the sprints. It's pretty amazing. So I'll certainly appreciate it, even if nobody else does.
But then we have one country in particular who literally does not follow that trend at all. That's India, which has the second largest population in the world, but such a poor history when it comes to the Olympic Games and like winning Olympic medals or even getting in the top 10 when it comes to medal tally. And this is something that they've been trying to focus and get off for a long time. And I've always wondered why. Like,
well, I think it's a question of priorities, really. I mean, they can say that they're doing that or trying to do that, but until somebody comes in there and actually, commits to it, and it really does have to come from at some point. It's got to come from pretty high up. I think that even here in the United States, we understand the value of sports and everything, and the other side of it too is, I mean, there's a lot going on in India right now that probably take their focus away from sports a little bit, which is unfortunate, because I think that if there's a way to kind of bring that to the front a little bit more, it would serve as a means of just kind of perhaps taking care of some other issues, because it does bring people closer together. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out. But yeah, certainly, they are strong in field hockey, but to your point, not many other places where they dominate. And that's weird, because like you said, it's like they've got 1 billion people there, so
over.
Yeah.
I mean, they did win a gold medal today, actually, or actually in the javelin throw, was a historic gold for India. They have 2 silvers and 4 bronzes, mainly in like the wrestling category. But it was very nice to see them getting a gold medal. And so kudos
Yeah.
to India. Kudos.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway,
Wen was also saying that this is a funny antidote to all the serious talk that we've been having. But believe it or not, the architecture was once an official Olympic sport.
Really?
Yeah. Which I can
Doesn't
understand.
even make any sense.
I can understand it. They were given to architects who made innovative schemes for the sporting arenas in the towns around the Olympic stadiums. So
Right.
Switzerland has a medal, the Dutch have a medal, and Austria has a medal as well. And it was canceled actually in the 48 Olympics, which is why we don't hear about it anymore.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah,
The
for good
London
reason, I guess.
But do you think that we should bring back architecture? Because
No, that's not a sport.
I'm trying here.
Yeah, you can have architecture awards for the Olympics, I guess,
Okay.
but and then kind of do it that way. But I'm not interested in seeing any architect take the podium, for a superior design.
With their drawing of how they should. Maybe we could do architecture for
I mean, I'm not knocking their talent or anything like that, but if you're not out there sweating and pulling muscles and stuff like that, you're not going to be getting an Olympic medal from me. So.
I mean, there's a lot of people who said there's a lot of sports that people think should be in the Olympics. There's a lot of sports that people think should not be in Olympics. So like equestrian, there's a lot of backlash for that. Trampoline even, and handball. People say handball shouldn't be in the Olympics at all. But what do you think of these? And what sports do you think should be added to the Olympics as well?
Yeah, well, added. I'd have to kind of really think about, because we're getting to the point now that you're thinking, okay, what isn't in the Olympics? But
for real.
But when I think about it, I'm looking at, I'm pretty flexible, I guess. But when you start getting into things like trampoline, I mean, you got gymnastics, right? I mean. So let that take care of all the athletes who are just incredibly gifted when it comes to knowing where their body is in 3-dimensional space. I mean, I can't even imagine doing that. Kind of shifting gears a little bit to what Simone Biles is going through. I'm surprised that doesn't happen more often. Because I'm thinking of myself, the only thing I could do when I was at the academy, we had to take gymnastics, and it was more or less just for general coordination and stuff like that. And I could jump, I could take a running start and I could do a forward flip, right? Couldn't do a back flip, but I could do a forward one. But that was it. And that was enough for me because I knew if I tried to do anything else, I'd be getting lost and I'd be landing right on my head. Exactly. And when Simone Biles was talking about getting the twisties and stuff like that, I'm like going, oh, so that really is a thing for gymnasts. I didn't know that, and now that I know about it, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often. Because I just can't imagine trying to keep track of what my body's doing when you're doing all that twisting and flipping in the air and trying to land on your feet without killing yourself. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Like what's up, what's down, like that. To be honest, just thinking about that just makes me dizzy, because these people are turning over 6-7 times in the air before their feet even land on the ground.
Right.
That. And so it's not even your brain just jiggling around in your head. It's also just like, which foot am I going to put down first?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
My ankles take it. And so, yeah, I'm glad that Simone Biles has really shined a light on some of the injury. It is probably a lot more common than we think, but as athletes, as we were talking about our mental health earlier as well, athletes do not speak up. We are trained to push forward through our injuries, basically, and just shut up and do the game. And I think athletes at the top levels like Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, and Michael Phelps have told us like that's not going to help anyone. And I'm glad that they are reaching out and telling people how things should be.
Yeah.
For athletes.
I mean, the thing I've never really been able to understand is that, you have, high blood pressure, you take medication for that, right? Okay. You have arthritis, you take medication for that. You have, and nobody thinks anything different, right? You have I have high cholesterol. I have to take medication for that. So that's all aspect of physical health. Why should mental health be any different, right? I mean, now you're dealing with arguably the most important part of your body, your brain, right? And for people to disparage anybody for having to manage those issues on some level, I think is really short-sighted. And I'm just like, to your point, I'm glad that everything is starting to kind of come into the light a little bit more as it relates to mental health, because I think that when people do understand it a little bit more and have the courage to confront it head on when they see these other examples of people coming out and telling their story, it's going to be better for everybody.
Exactly. I mean, and honestly, it kind of just pisses me off, like, especially reading the comments on social media. It's when people who have people who have no experience being an athlete just talk about athletes like they know what they're talking about.
I know.
But in other words too, I mean, you played sports. You were obviously very active in the Naval Academy. What sports did you play, and what sports do you love to watch now as well?
Well, I think the one I like to watch the most is college basketball. And, I'm not saying this because I'm talking to you, but I'm a Duke fan for a number of reasons. My godchild graduated from Duke in, what was it? Let me see. 2000, and let's see, she was 193, so 0313. So probably about 8 years ago, she graduated. And she's actually living in New Zealand now, working for the government down there. But
wow, we can talk to
I was initially when I was in flight school, I was dating a girl whose roommate went to Duke, and I remember watching the Final Four, well, actually the NCAA basketball tournament over there, because that was the year that Navy and David Robinson made it to the Elite Eight, and it was Duke that knocked them out with that team they had with Tommy Amaker and Johnny Dawkins, and that team that made it to the final against Louisville, but they ended up coming up a little bit short. But that's when I first started following the Blue Devils, and subsequently, following their championships all through the years. But college basketball is my big one. College football, I guess, is the next one. But I don't really follow many teams besides Navy, and Navy's never going to be a national champion in football, and I don't care. But but I just like watching them because I still think they represent what college football is all about. Some of the other sports that maybe a lot of people don't know too much about, we've talked about rowing a few times. I've been a really big fan of that sport, especially in the last few years that I've learned a little bit more about it. And tennis, I used to watch a lot more on TV than I do now. But my wife and I do go to Indian Wells. We've been there 3 times to watch the big tournament. Both the men's and women's tours make a stop in Indian Wells and outside of Palm Desert, California. That's about a 5-hour drive from where I am here in Phoenix. And we haven't been able to go the last 2 years because of the coronavirus, but they're actually going to be having the one tournament. This year's tournament was pushed back from March until October. So they're going to have it in October. We're not going to go to that one, but we're going to go again in March when they go back on the regular schedule. So I enjoy watching tennis live much more than I do watching it on TV these days. But that is a great venue. It's nice and compact. My wife had her picture taken with Serena Williams, Venus Williams, Serena Williams' coach. All those things. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah, I need to go over there. But like you were saying, I mean, I'm a North Carolina native, so, and also both of my parents went to state, but
really?
Family rivalry. But I mean, Duke basketball runs in my blood. I love it. I mean, ever since before I was even recruited to play volleyball here, I pretty much knew that I was gonna go to Duke. I had to go to Duke.
Right.
But right. I mean, the basketball here is just unreal. And like you said, Cameron Indoor Stadium is also that compact stadium that makes you feel, watching it on TV is one thing. Obviously, it's awesome. You have the hype. But being in the moment, in the stadium, when things are happening right in front of your face, the crowd is wild, the cheer is wild, and everyone's yelling at the top of your lungs. You see like celebrities, especially at Duke games as a student. It's awesome to see so many high-level people. Like we have Obama who came. We have rappers who come. We have like Floyd Mayweather who comes. So it's an amazing experience. And hopefully after once we get over this Delta variant, we can get back to that. And as a student, hopefully I can still get into the games free and not pay over like $2,000 for a seat. Maybe
I know. Yeah. That's why I like television.
But as we're coming to a close here, anything else to say concerning the Olympics and like, what are you looking for? I mean, we already talked about it, but like anything else for this last day?
Yeah, well, I just want to see how the final, medal count comes out, just out of curiosity. And like I said, I think the U.S. team has have made a really good account of themselves and really stood up and answered the bell. So it'll be neat to see who else gets up there on the podium. I will be kind of checking out the marathon. I'm not really a big closing ceremonies guy, and I think I probably would be this year if there'd been like a full crowd and all that kind of stuff. But I'll probably spend the next couple of days just kind of reviewing some of the events I didn't get a chance to see on NBC Sports YouTube page and YouTube channel and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, me as well. I mean, obviously, like we already talked about tonight, I will be watching U.S. versus Brazil, most definitely for that gold medal match, and hopefully U.S. can bring home that gold.
Yeah. Hey, real quickly before we go, and this is another volleyball question. When did they go to essentially, and I think it's a good move, first of all, because it definitely speeds up the game, and sometimes it's so nerve-wracking. Remember when you could only score a point on your serve? Did that rule change come about when you were playing, or did it happen before you started playing?
Happened like in the 80s. So before
No way.
It feels like it happened in the 80s. Maybe I'm just young.
Trust me on this one, okay? The games were first to 15, and you could only score on your serve. Okay. And then, but it just dragged the games out so long. I remember playing in a really competitive league when I was in the Navy, and man, it was just crazy. But at some point, I started watching some of the games again about maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and I'm going, whoa, what's going on here? They're playing to 25 and they're scoring on every point. I actually like that, Yeah. Are there any other innovations that you would like to see in volleyball that aren't there right now?
That is a good question, especially as an athlete. You're kind of just like, well, these are the rules that I have to get into. It's kind of like this box that you're put into. So
right.
Really, your forefront. But
well, the other thing I like that they go ahead.
I have a rule. So there's this thing called over. So let's say you're a blocker and it's the second ball. And let's say the ball is very close to the net and the setter has their hands on it. And so most of the time, it's a very technical rule, so bear with me. So most of the time, the setter is in the back row. So because they are touching the ball and it's on their side of the net, they have majority over it. And because they're in the back row, somebody from the front row on the other side cannot touch the ball. Otherwise, it's the setter's team's point. I hate that rule because as a blocker, if I see the ball close to the net, if I see the ball in my area, I'm going for it, regardless of what anyone says. And so it makes it complicated. And it's something that as players, we don't think about because we're trained to see the ball, get the ball, go get the ball. And when the setter goes up and we touch the ball at the same time, it's automatically their point because technically it's an interference of the game because she could be setting it to somebody. It's like goaltending kind of.
Oh, I'm with you. So it's the opposing team setter and they're close to the net. And if they're setting it to the other one of the other teammates, then you guys can't touch. Well, what if they set it long? I mean, can you go after it then?
We can go after it leaves their hands.
Okay.
Not before and not during.
Oh, got it. So they're right there on the net and you're right there with them and you're saying, okay, as long as I don't touch the net physically, I should be able to hammer that ball and
exactly. Like you should okay. Be my side of the net in the first place.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I could go along with that. I think that makes sense. That'll teach people to set the ball in the right place, right?
That'll teach people to pass the ball in the right place because it's technically not the setter's fault that they have to go all the way up there to go get the ball.
Right, right, for sure.
Yeah, that's the only rule I would change as a front row player, and as a hitter. That's the only rule I would change, I think.
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, I would support you on that one.
Hopefully I can talk to the officials and maybe since volleyball has changed over the years, we can get something going.
Right. Oh,
But
shoot, we've already been talking for
in
45 minutes,
in
so
other news as well, yeah, I just want to say thank you, Mr. Call, for co-hosting with me today. And unfortunately, Mr. Mark had some technical problems, but we had his lovely face and his lovely smile and his awesome comments to keep us going along the way. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning into IMB TV's coverage of the Olympics. And if Mr. Wen can get us out of here with that lovely plane, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
okay. See you later.
Bye, everyone.